Okay, I'm going to begin.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
w- Welcome, everyone. Uh, my name is James Nicholas. I'm a certified bodynamic analyst. I'm a teacher. I'm also a clinical social worker, and I'm going to lead you today through a kind of an introduction to bodynamic. Before I start, can everybody hear me? Is there anyone who can't hear me? Good. So I'm going to I attached the handouts that hopefully will help organize today's discussion. Um, by way of introduction, I will say that it's always challenging to talk about body dynamic, especially online, because um, it's 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 difficult to talk in words about things that when we train and when we work are more experienced, you know. Um, there's a wisdom that you can access in the body that is felt and felt in connection, but it doesn't come out in words. And I was thinking of an example this morning. If I was going to talk about grounding, being grounded, to talk about grounding, I have to go into my head and talk about the concept and start getting abstract. And it's already I'm kind of at risk of losing the ground, the feeling of being grounded while I'm talking about it. So what I'm going to try to do is make this as interactive as possible so you can all get a taste or a sense of flavor of what we do in Body Dynamic. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, the history of Body Dynamic, and then go through some kind of an overview about the training, the education, the basic components of it. And then I've attached some questionnaires and we'll do some exercises and take questions and hopefully you'll get uh, a little, as I said, a little taste of what we do with Body Dynamic, and you'll be interested in maybe training with us. Um, so one of the first things I attached was preliminary questions. And I want everybody to just, this isn't to answer now. It's just to think and keep in the background. Because as we go through the notes today, hopefully some of the answers will pop up. Um, so the first question is, who am I? Right? Wow, that's a very broad, abstract question. But the reason I put it in the overview is because that's sort of the crisis. I'll call it my crisis question for me. Call it an identity crisis. For those of you who are a therapist, you've probably worked with this question. And I struggled with answering it. And then I had a, a realization that the answer to who I am, whatever that is really better answered by trying to reframe it and say, where am I? Because I can answer the question, where am I, or when am I, and get to the who am I much more easily than starting with the big abstract, who am I and where did I come from? And so think about that because we're going to talk a little bit about where we locate ourselves in our bodies in terms of centering, grounding, managing our energy, and so forth. The next question is how did I come to be who I am? Meaning, what kind of messages in the environment did I have, was I exposed to that gave me the idea that it's safe to be this way and not safe to be that way? And how did it form what we were going to speak about in some detail, codings or a coding system, basically unconscious choices that become part of this is just how it is for me, but actually were the product of a process, a developmental process of adapting to environment, primarily through childhood development. It was never always safe to. Keep that in the back of your mind if you have some awareness around that. What is relaxed to me? Relaxation is a key concept here because, as I'm going to explain, body dynamic it grew out of the founder's experience with relaxation therapy. It's another one that's personal to me because I didn't know that I wasn't relaxed until I learned to relax a little bit. And then it was, oh, that's what relaxed is. Um, when am I relaxed? What's my response to stress? Where do I live? I want do I live primarily in my thoughts? Do I live in my emotions? Do I live in my body sensations? How do I use my body in my daily life? Is it do I have a yoga practice? Is it something where I feel embodied all the time? Do I think of myself as having a mind and a body that sometimes connect and sometimes are being far apart from each other? Or do I think of myself as a body mind or an integrated system? Um, I I recently I had a conversation with a friend and a colleague, and um, she, in the time that I knew her, she used to talk about the body. She's an engineer. She's a physicist and an engineer. She used to talk about the body, not my body or feeling a body, but the body. And I pointed it out to her. She's like, it was that level of abstraction, as though the body is something out there that's separate from me. And the last question is, am I fulfilled? And separate question, am I satisfied in life? Fulfillment and satisfaction aren't necessarily the same thing. And am I who and where I want to be at this moment? So keep those in the background. There's another questionnaire that we're going to go through in connection with doing exercises that's more specific, that hopefully will give everyone some insight about um, some of the answers to these preliminary questions, meaning the messages, the codings, the things that are sort of we take for granted. So if you go to the the next handout, which is the Introduction to Bodynamic, I've kind of written this out for you all to review, so that it's not just me talking here. But as I said, this system really came out of the 60s. It came from Lisbeth's work, her own trauma history, and working with clients, and also working with supporting mothers giving birth. And she worked with people who to help support them to relax. And she started to notice patterns in different people that traditionally is thought of as, let's say, armoring or blocks or stuck points. And little by little, as she worked with people, she started to investigate more. She wasn't really a psychologist or psychotherapist, but she started exploring the history of psychodynamic treatment, psychology, and so forth. And she started to gather data and develop research. And in working with people, she started to notice there were common patterns for everybody, for all human beings, across culture, across background, and that she worked with the body and became aware that there's a certain kind of, we call it muscle tonus. There's a certain kind of tension level in muscles and fascia that corresponded very precisely with statements that people made. In other words, working with a particular muscle with one person where it would be provoked or stimulated in some way, and then verbal feedback seemed to match in all people. And from that, a body of research was developed where and systematized. And I admire her greatly. She's very much a scientist. She's one to point out that the theory wasn't her theory that she imposed on the world, or she didn't have an idea about it. It came from the data, from the empirical research. So what she and others did was do thousands and thousands and thousands of cases where working with people in various states of tension or relaxation, and working precisely with all the muscles and fascia, we're able to see that, wow, human beings go through a process of psychomotoric development, and there's also a pedagogical aspect of it. I say pedagogical, meaning the psycho and the psychomotoric is how we learn to become who we are and to behave in the world, to behave socially and respond. So it's not just a physical thing, that all these muscles and fascia that we have as our bodies grow from infancy to adulthood also are encoded with information about how to be persons, how to have identity, how to be people, how to be um, psychological, emotional, physical, and spiritual beings. And from this, she and other researchers were able to get clear about and narrow in and get very specific about ego functions. The term ego is not meant in the Freudian sense. It's meant as in the way that the ancient Greek word for the I. Now, I don't want to get into a discussion about whether we really exist or whether this is an illusion. I have been exposed to some Buddhist thinking and some spiritual teaching, but for all intents and purposes, what we're focused on is the reality of having this body, having this mind in this body, and these emotions in this body, and having this life course. It's in that sense I'm talking about the I, in the sense that we're all separate in our own little spaces now and individual beings. The formation of that self-understanding or self-awareness is primarily driven by things we learn. These are called ego functions. There's 11 of them in our system, and that's where it started. And then from the ego functions, the research continued and got deeper, and Elizabeth developed the character structure model of development. The character structure model of development is revolutionary in a very specific way. To that point in time, so let me just say what it is. The character structure model of development is that we go through 7 stages. There's a handout for it, and I'll go through the stages. But from what's called existence, through need structure, through autonomy structure, through will structure, and on as we go towards puberty, we all go through these stages of development, and that there are very specific themes in each one of the stages, meaning that we learn how to be people sequentially in time. Before, when you see a newborn really can't do anything other than use certain muscles and be aware of certain things through the birth process and maybe lifting the neck or the head. There's a high level of dependency and support, but there's a psychological awareness that's encoded in that, and on and on. And so the foundation training, which hopefully all of you will be interested in participating in at one point, starts with the second step first. We start with the character structures and the themes around the character structures and what are called character positions, meaning the ways that we protect ourselves around those themes, right? So if it's a very safe, very welcoming, very loving system, and we think of it as highly resourced, a person will experience that they have a lot of space in their body, and they have a lot of time, meaning if something happens in the world that you react to, you have a lot of choice about it, right? If there isn't a lot of safety, what happens is people will learn and will adapt to protect those themes, those resources, by distorting one or more or losing one or more of their ego functions that around that character structure that is a way of protecting. So I protect my power by holding it back. This is an example. And feeling no matter what I do, it's not enough. It doesn't mean that I don't have power. It means that I don't express it freely because I got the message that my power was too much for my parents or too much for the school. And so I protect it that way. And so what we do is we explore in the body, in the training, where a person sort of lives in terms of their character structures. And you will find out that all of us usually have 3 of our favorite character structures. We will almost always have an outward-facing character structure that we show to the world. And the opposite one will be the inner one that we keep to ourselves. And that depending upon how safe we felt, we tend to go into these character positions. We live in the positions. The revolution that from my perspective, that she really came up with was that prior to that time, there were like Reichian, when the Reichian psychotherapists started working with the body, they were really focused on body armor, you know, this kind of notion that someone is full of charge and hypertense and closed off, and that so all these exercises were about releasing, you know, releasing, breaking the armor and releasing and achieving relaxation that way. What Lisbeth did, her system is a tripartite system. It's different from, let's say, the Erickson and Freud. It has an early position and a late position. So what she understood that other people before her didn't understand was that, and you can refer to this. I'm talking about this now. What she understood was as we go through these stages of development, there are some environments, and this developmental trauma is an example of this, where it's not that I access the theme, right? I have my emotion and I explored the world as a toddler, but it wasn't met in an ideal way. And so I protect it by cutting off from some aspect of myself. It's that in some instances, there wasn't enough safety to even explore at all. So this is really an amazing thing that if you're trying to work with someone, for example, and you're coming from the perspective that all I've got to do is break the armor and then they'll be released and then they'll have more access to resources psychologically. It misses the point that in some cases it wasn't even learned to begin with. These are the so-called early positions where there isn't a life experience around the particular theme. The cutoff, it's what we call a collapsed position or a blue position where the muscles they don't even have energy in them. They're not even available. So there's a lot what we do in our system to educate to work with folks that have that experience to recreate, so to speak, the experience that ideally would have happened developmentally in the therapy room, in the training, so that it leads to this amazing aha. Oh, that's what that is. So by way of example, you'll see that I won't go into detail because I gave you the handouts so that you can have it. The autonomy stage is one that happens between 8 months and 2.5 years, right? And so this is the stage where little kids start to crawl around and explore the world and become aware of their impulses and excitement and curiosity and explore objects. And one of the things that comes online at this stage of development is the ability, and I have a son, I have an 11-year-old, and I remember when he started in this stage, the hands were up all the time, meaning he didn't even know I was behind him. He just assumed I was there, expected me to be there, put his hands up, I put my hands up, he pulled himself up so we could go. It's pretty exhausting, by the way, if any of you have this experience. They expect you, the child in this stage, to be there all the time, to have the contact, to have the safety to go explore. Well, imagine a scenario where someone is not there and the hands go up and there's no response. The hands go up again, there's no response. So this is an impulse that's natural, it's in all of us. No response, no response, no response, no response. What's the message that you get? There's no help. So there will be cases where, and maybe some of you, I see some nods, have this in your own life or with working with clients where asking for help, this is just a question mark. I have to do it all by myself or else I can't do it. This theme never actually got developed enough so that it's not even that I don't trust asking for help, it's that I don't know what it is. I don't even know how to ask for support. So here you are in the therapy room with someone who is seeking help but doesn't know how to ask for help. It creates a challenge in providing support. So these are the kinds of things we get into in the in the foundational training where everybody will, who's part of the training, will explore in terms of their own process in connection with others and feel, experience in the body where 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 our energy, where how we hold our energy and how we sense ourselves. And it's as I said, it's difficult to talk about in words because the ahas happen when we feel safe enough to experience it, and then we're in connection, which means there are witnesses to it. Each one of us, all of us, know uniquely what it feels like to be ourselves, using that word loosely, from the inside. No one else knows, Chital has a monopoly on what it feels like to be Chital from the inside, right? The risk here is that that creates this feeling, this illusion of aloneness, not even loneliness, aloneness. I'm alone in the world. And it's an illusion because we don't come to even sense who we are primarily. There's always connection first. There was a world before we could sense ourselves in relation to the world. And so working together in connection really, really gets us out of the illusion of being totally alone. And of course, nobody can feel our feelings exactly, but empathically, we can relate because someone else who I'm working with also has a body and also has an inner experience around that particular character structure. And now we have a common reference point, which leads me to the sort of the big concept, the driving concept of bodynamic, which is mutual connection. Mutual connection is a concept that I am, as an ex-philosopher, in love with, because to me it is both the reality of the world, the reality of human life, and also the ideal. We human beings are unique in that we can be really, really smart, and so smart that we're stupid. Sorry, that's a kind of a judgmental will word, but what I'm saying is we can be so free that we can be free to not be who we are. We can be free to not be human. We can go too far. We can get so lost in our illusions that we forget about what really is. So there's always going to be this dialogue or this dance between what is and and potentially and what is how we actually live, right? So it's like I'll give you another example. For me, I when I was in my therapeutic process, I discovered that this question of who am I, right, that I couldn't answer was really that I wasn't in my center, right? I don't have a center. Oh, and then the self-blame and the opportunity to self-flagellate was, almost any chance I had, that's what I would take. And then I started to get in my center, right? And then I realized when I was working, I started to feel things that were, from the standpoint of physical sensation, manageable. Pain, a pain that you can imagine, like if you've ever been to the snow, those of you who are in Canada, if you've ever been in the snow where your hands get really, really cold and numb, and then they come back to life and they really, I don't know if anyone's had this, where they really, really hurt. It's like, because they were kind of dead in a dead state, and then the nerve endings wake up again when your hands warm up. That's kind of how it felt when I started to get into my center. I couldn't sleep at night. My pelvis was killing me. It was like it was deep, deep, deep pain. But that was manageable. The part that was very difficult that I really needed a lot of support with was that the messaging around that, the avoidance wasn't around the sensation of life energy. It was that it's not safe to be there. So that's why I stayed out of my center. So I remember sharing, I said, I just blurted out spontaneously, if you had my center, you wouldn't want to be centered either. So why am I saying all this? Because I've always had a center. We all have a center. We can't be here without a center, but we don't necessarily live in our center. We're not necessarily connected to our center. So this is the key point. The potential is always there. It is. It has an isness to it. It's not one day I'm going to develop a center, but it's that I give my center up. I let go of my center. And there was a choice involved. The choice could have been deeply, 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 deeply unconscious, not even feel like a choice, feel like this happened to me. But it's still, we work to empower people with the concept that as we get into our bodies and as we start to move energy around and work with our system, these character positions, we can discover that, yes, I did make a choice. And it was a good choice in that environment and that time to give up a center or to give up the ground or to restrict my emotion, hold back my emotions, or to never speak up and give my opinions, or never stand out in the group. A lot of folks that I work with from Eastern Europe or the former Soviet Union, when it's time to give a presentation like this, it's panic because the message is, dude, don't ever, ever stand apart from the group. You lose connection. These things exist as a potential and as a reality, bridging the gap between how we live and achieving our potential is sort of at the heart of what we do, and we do it in the foundation training. So what I want to say before we go into some interactive stuff. Oh, I'm going pretty fast. I always worry that I'll go too long, but I have good support, so I'm on time. So one of the things I want, if you go back to the handout here, I've talked about mutual connection, and I've talked about the bodynamic system is a system based on human rights. That's about the only absolute, that we're all have a right to connection and to dignity. Mutual connection is the sense of connection with self, dignity, self agency, self-determination, empowerment, and also to be in connection with another person that has those same rights. That mutual connection is real, but it exists as a potential. We don't all live in mutual connection. Most of the time, what we do is, in extreme cases of the codependent situation where there's an unconscious agreement where I won't be my full self because I'm afraid to be my full self, and you won't be your full self, and we'll be together and we'll mutually reinforce this thing, and we'll protect ourselves this way, and we'll stay in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage or whatever, and then we'll just kind of be miserable, but at least we'll be miserable together. That's a sort of extreme codependency case. But almost always there's some kind of unconscious or semi-conscious way in which we create mutual connection by giving up some aspect of our expectations around connection, or some aspects of our expectation around really sensing ourselves fully from the inside. And so, again, it's there as a potential that even though we can touch it and we can experience it and we can share it and we can go, wow, that was great. I'm working with Ariana. That was amazing what just happened. It's because as long as we're alive, it's an ongoing process, because there's new events, new experiences, new relationships, new opportunities for growth and learning. It's a lifelong thing. And so working with your character structures really gives you the capacity to then go forward in life, looking for those opportunities for mutual connection and for achieving your potential on this earth. In the system, we have what are called ego aspects that are operationalized through the character structures and through the ego functions. When you get to the practitioner training, if you do that, it's more focused on working with function, interpersonal skills, grounding, boundaries, reality testing, centering, connectedness, the ability to actually open your heart, to take in love, to give love from your heart, the ability to bond with someone, the ability to take in support through the back muscles, for example, where you really feel, that you have self-support wherever you go. There's someone with you, or there's something with you, or some spiritual force with you, or some inner sense of, hey, I have support. Um, the ego aspects aren't just, they don't line up exactly with the character structures, but they are all ways of having a sense of an I that correlate with the developmental process. So the first ego aspect will be the body ego, right? Before we even have a thought or an awareness, one of the first things anyone does is a child becomes aware of their own body. That's the, like, whoa, I'm not my foot, I'm not my eyes, I'm not my head, I'm not my hand. I have a hand. And look what that can do. And I have another hand. And look at this. And they're connected to arms that have a torso and have a waist and have legs. This is the wholeness concept of the ego. It's in that sense I'm using the term ego. That body ego, again, is another thing I'm gonna say is revolutionary in terms of the kinds of interventions that are available to us. My experience of talk therapy, even cognitive behavioral therapy, or my wife does schema therapy, the mind is incredibly good at keeping us where we are. It's genius. The psychological system will take over the therapy. I'm seeing a smiles, I'm seeing a nod. You know what I'm talking about. It has a funny way of recreating a reality or imposing how we unconsciously or semi-consciously view our expectations for life, not only on the outside world and recreating relationships that make it so, but also in the therapeutic process. For those of you who have worked with sort of, I don't want to call them hardcore cases, but let's say tough cases. Uh, the example of borderline personality comes up a lot. There isn't a way in which I'm going to make you abandon me no matter what, right? Working with talk and working with the traditional talk therapy. And no matter how much trust you build in this system, that something will happen. You'll look away. You won't be at your best on that day or whatever. And boom, it shows up and subverts the therapeutic process. By working with the body ego as a body, which is really the thing that you would get trained in, to sense the body without the words, to sense it, sense the experience of it, to start to get to know yourself just in yourself as a body, almost going back to the beginning, allows allows
Yeah.
us, sorry, am I, allows us to create safety in a way that talk therapy, although the talking is there, the talk therapy can't get to. The words, it's hard to go around the defenses verbally without triggering new defenses, almost like this mythological character that, right, that keeps you changing shape all the time. When you go into the body and it's a physically sensed experience that's shared in connection, the message is, you know what? I'm in my center. My pelvis hurts. I'm with somebody. I'm not alone with it, and it's safe. That's the corrective experience. The corrective experience is life involves fear, shame, sadness, anger, emotions, body sensations. But the new message is it's safe for me to feel these things because I can go into the body and I can reconstruct, so to speak, my later ego aspects, my individual ones, which is subjectively, what do I like? Who am I really? What are the things that are really important to me in an intimate way? My role ego, how am I in the world as a brother, sister, father, daughter, therapist, friend, colleague, you name it. Those are like how I am in my role. And then can I learn to observe myself? Can I learn to observe myself in an honest way that's not triggering, right? Most people, and I've just done some work on this, most people in our world have some kind of thing going on where they see themselves, but they project themselves into the outside world. So they're not actually observing what's going on in them. They're seeing it in all the problems they see in other people. There's a lot of projection and a lot of displacement. The observing ego is a way of really seeing what's going on, containing the emotions that are around it, especially if it's shame, because shame is something nobody wants to experience typically, and feeling safe to do so. And when you can start to have a body ego and own your self-worth and have an observing ego, your process takes off, your individual process of growth takes off, but also for those of you who are therapists or body workers or whatever, your ability to provide support takes a quantum leap because you can sit there embodied and be safe with these things when you're mirroring and working with a client, and it automatically provides support and invites people to come in and explore these parts of themselves that otherwise with just traditional talk therapy they wouldn't do. And then, of course, the last one is the integrated ego, which is sort of the ego that knows that it has all these ego aspects. It's the part that's talking now that can talk about my observing ego, and it can talk about my body ego, and can talk about my role ego. So um, those are the basic components of the model, the character structures, which are the positions, and the ego functions, and the ego aspects, which is a through line. And then we also have, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, we also have conflict resolution model, which is called the body knot, which allows you to use your observing ego to really get aware in real time about what's really going on here versus what do my structures want to impose on the situation. And then there's also something that is a diagnostic tool, that is another revolutionary aspect of it, which is called the body knot. Now I've attached the body map. I've attached two of them. I can show you this here for reference. These are going back to what I said at the beginning, when Elizabeth tested all the muscles and did the research, she then developed a system of actually systematizing the testing and getting a score that you can then use, one can use to really see what's going on a psychomotoric level. So I've given you two examples of this. I think it's a fascinating thing. It gives you an idea of what I was talking about earlier with the character structures. So this is a body map that I did, and I also gave you one that's been scored by our software. And you can see that in this particular instance, there's muscles that are more or less light orange and light blue. So let me explain a little bit about what I'm talking about before we get into the questionnaire. So what is relaxed? How do I even answer that question? Well, the body map answers the question because you can test some muscles that will be so rock hard that they won't even allow the tester to provoke the muscle. It won't let anything in. It's armored. And there will be other muscles that are so collapsed that it's almost like there's no life in the muscle. Relaxed is when we are actually can hold our energy in our body and be available to the outside world and have a flexibility about it. And you will see it in the muscle testing. So the light muscles that I'm talking about we call them A1 and B1. Those muscles will, when you test them, will give you an answer. They will take in energy from the outside world. So by analogy, you're open to contact with someone, but this is body wise. And then we'll respond. Some muscles, when you provoke them, they will run away. They will collapse, meaning I'm running away from contact. Other muscles won't even let the contact in. But when there's a lot of resource, what relaxed is, it's I can take in the energy and I can respond to it. And that's connectedness. That's mutual connection, actually. And so I wanted to just show you this because this is one of the key tools of our system. But I've also was told by Ariana yesterday that I got to remind everybody that when you train in Bodynamic, you do not have to learn all the muscles because people freak out and nobody knows all the muscles. There's 125 of them, and they are all contained in this book, which is the Bible, the Body Encyclopedia, and it has everything in it. And it has all of the psychological functions and all of the character structure and ego functions for all these 125 muscles that nobody knows by heart. So if any of you are thinking about this, don't worry about that. But what is a reference guide, let me tell you a little bit about what happens when you are working with someone and you use body sensation as part of the work. You're working on a theme, you're working on an issue in therapy, and somebody will say, you know, I feel that my shoulders get tight, right? And so you'll sense that, you'll spend some time with it, and then you'll identify it. And then I'll go into and the client will say, I don't really know what's going on. And you'll go into the Body Encyclopedia, and one of the muscles that we're going to work with today is levator scapula. And so I can read what the psychological function of the levator scapula is. This is a will muscle. This has to do with power and choice and consequences. And read the psychological function. And a lot of us who have been doing this for a while all say the same thing. The client comes back and says, that's exactly what I feel. How in the heck did you know that that's what's going on with me? It's almost like you're reading my mind. So even as this has been an empirically verified system, we are constantly validating it all the time in practice because it's so precise how you can identify specific muscles and specific information that's encoded in the muscle. And the levator scapula is one that has to do with people who feel burdened all the time or overwhelmed all the time or stuck with no matter what I do, I'm going to be judged or it's not going to be good enough. And it will show up in the body, and then you can work with the muscle. And by working with the muscle, you can release and create a new potential for a corrective experience, meaning that it doesn't have to be that way. So before I open it up to questions, I wanted to say that going back to this theme of relaxation, the main thing to keep in mind when you work in Bodynamic is the difference between, let me back up. We always work from a position of resource. No matter how stuck a person feels or miserable they are or frustrated, there are resources in all of us. They may be encoded, they may be what are called enclosed loops, coding systems that are closed, meaning that's the way it is. Whenever somebody says this to me, this is my response. There's no other choice. There's a have to. But inside of that, there's some theme that's being protected. Or the instance where the loop opens to new information. And when there's not a have to, when there's more of a choice about it, and when there's a container in terms of your energy, your reaction that you can breathe through, and you can be having this experience of reacting, but deciding whether to act on it or whether to say or behave the way that you're used to behaving. That's when these loops open. They're not closed, and it's not a have to anymore. There's a choice. And that's really the most exciting thing in this process is when people in there you that we all witness go from being a certain way because that's the way it is to really being able to explore um, not just who they are, but who they want to be. Um, so I'm gonna stop now and see if there's any questions. I went pretty fast. This is a hard thing to do. This is a very detailed system, and I'm trying to do it in a short amount of time. Does anyone have any questions about what I've said so far? This overview.
I do.
Okay. Laura,
Hi.
hi.
Wow, I'm super excited. Um, Super excited and really appreciate your introduction. It really lands. Um, I'm wondering how you assess the quality of the tension that is in the muscle. Is it intuitive? Is it visual? Do you touch it? How do you assess?
Great question. Did everyone hear the question? Yeah? Okay. How do you assess? Well, one way is if you can do a body map. Okay. You don't have to learn how to do body mapping, but you can do that. You test the muscles and you'll get a score about whether how it responds. If it's extremely tense, right? It means no go there. If it's less tense, it might mean someone gets triggered. They're in a connection. They'll have a triggering reaction, and then it almost always goes to the same response. Another way to assess is you can some people are really good at this. Dita Marker is fantastic at this. You just learn to read bodies. You see how people walk. You see how people talk. um, and it'll just occur to you what structure they're in. I used the example yesterday about when my son was little, right? He's a bodynamic baby. So my wife and I kind of got out of the way compared to some of the other people that were in our little group where they were in such a rush for the child to be potty trained, pushing them to be potty trained, pushing them to crawl, pushing them to walk, and things like that. And so one of these little boys walked before my son George. He crawled late and walked late. Oh, you gotta get him to walk. And so what ends up happening is that the child learned to walk in a way that is sort of think of the Charlie Chaplin walk where the feet are out and it's a kind of a this thing because he's efforting to walk before he was ready. You will see people with their feet open like this and the way their bodies are, and you will just learn to see with time. That's the autonomy. You'll see that that's an autonomy walk, for example. And then verbally, you'll get used to the certain statements that recur. You'll hear it. You'll hear the self-judgment, and you'll immediately think that's a will structure. Or you'll if you ever go out to dinner with someone and nobody can order, right? What do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? And someone is waiting for someone else to pick the right thing to order at dinner so that they know. That's a need that'll be need structure. So there's really you'll see it verbally, you'll feel it energetically in yourself, and it'll just occur to you. And then a lot of times if you'll mirror someone and then you just check it out. I'm getting this I have this impression that maybe what's going on is, and maybe true, maybe not, maybe right on the money, but they're not ready to get that feedback. But those are the three primary ways of assessing: reading bodies, and and hearing statements, and then the doing body maps. But also there is there is a way in which energetically, although I don't always recommend it, energetically, therapists tend to be very empathic. And so energetically, they will have an impression. You will have an impression. And then you got to check it out to see if it's really real. Also, you can tune in with someone and invite them as, and it's part of like it's an automatic thing for us. What do you sense? I've had clients that say, I don't I don't know what you mean. What's the sense of it? You meaning they want to talk about it. They want to know what is the sensation? And the ability to teach yourself and others how to sense will also give you clues about how to assess what's really going on because they will sense things in their body and report, and that will give you an indication about what particular structure it is that you're working with. Did that answer your question?
It very much does. I'll be so curious about this. I'm very excited. I can see myself just based on your presentation, saying, I wonder if we could be curious about, right here. I mean, do you ever ask clients to, for example, I'm just curious about this area right here, you know? Do you kind of do that inquiry if someone is working already somatically? Like, let's notice what's here, what comes up as you make contact with this place or something. Do you do that kind
Absolutely.
of? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That curiosity, if I've achieved anything today, it's that there's that you're curious. That's a great tool. That'll be a great tool for you to be curious because what we're really talking about is investigating. Investigating. Because if you try to go change something that is a survival mechanism, it's going to push back and it's going to be even more strengthen itself even more. But if you get curious and you investigate, you can discover amazing things. I think that's a great stance to have. Any other questions?
Yes. So there's in the chat, Genevieve, she was wondering why it's only 125 muscles that were extracted, 125 muscles and fascia that were extracted for this work and not more than that.
Another great question. What a sharp group. Some of the muscles and fascia just are not accessible. They're in the book, they're in the encyclopedia, but they're not testable. The hardest muscle in my experience to test is transversus thoracis, and it's a breathing muscle. It's a little spider muscle below the sternum that we breathe with early in life. Before the diaphragm doesn't really get involved in breathing until about 3, 4 years old, and you got to go underneath the sternum to access it, and it's really hard. No one can really push into that muscle and test it. You're testing it more energetically. That's on the outer threshold of what can be tested. A lot of these muscles that are like the deep pelvic floor muscles, you can't really test them. So we do it indirectly, energetically more than testing. On the other hand, like the psoas muscle, which is a deep muscle, I don't know if any of you what your level of body awareness is, but the psoas attaches to the spinal column, and then it goes down over the pelvis and it connects to the femur. And so you've got to go in through the side of the thorax and access it and test it that way. There's some hard muscles to test, but really, I mean, the fact that they even had 125 is it's amazing to me that they thought all these muscles could be tested. But the short answer is that you can't test everything. But you can test muscles in the face, right? Which is also, these are muscles that we tend to ignore a lot because we're focused more on the bigger muscles. But the muscles in the face will be very much linked to other muscles, deeper muscles in the body. In other words, when you're looking at someone and we see each other's reactions, these muscles they have information. They're firing in exactly the same way that if I have an impulse to run, suddenly blood will go into my hamstrings and I'm leaving, right? So we can test a lot of muscles and we can get a very precise picture, but we can't test all of them.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll let Lorenia ask the next question, but there's another one in the chat that I will come back to.
Hi, James. Thank you so much for
Oh,
your for your
I know this guy.
presentation.
I know somebody here.
Yeah. Um, yes, I have two questions. One, in terms of the training, how much is theory versus experiential? And then the second part of that is much more around sexuality. And if you could expand on what aspects of sexuality you'll be covering, and also in particularly around the genitalia and sexual abuse.
Good questions. This is way more theoretical than anything you would do in the training. This is hard. I mean, I can talk. I have a background as an attorney and I studied, but this is hard. This system is really to be experienced um, in connection. So we will talk about theory, but that's not the driving force. It will be your understanding of yourself that will then make the theory clear, right? It tends to be more body driven, and then the concepts come on top of that. Some people want more conceptual understanding before they can get into the work, and that's fine. It's available, but it tends to be, I would say, more on the experience of working through exercises, working through the developmental stages, and not the theory. As far as sexual abuse specifically, we do have there is a character stage. I don't have my little, what did I do with it?
Sexuality.
Love sexuality, yeah.
Love and sexuality. So,
Yeah.
so this is 3 to 6 years, and you see the positions are the early position is the romantic, and the later position is seductive. I'm a person that was very romantic. And sometimes that gets, my perception is that it's criticized as, oh, you live in these ideals and you're not living in the real world. But for me, that was my way of soothing, you know, to get through, to be in the world, to invest in the world. I had to create a picture of what I wanted it to be, to make it be less scary, to make it be worth going through. And so you will see, like when I did my foundation, the romantic tends to go to Marlon's question. My pelvis was flipped back, was tilted back. So imagine, it's like sticking my butt out and almost like pushing forward like this from my belly, because I'm hiding my genitals. I'm hiding my sex. I'm coming forward with my heart. It's it's love and flowers, and there's going to be some person out there that I'm going to meet, and it's going to solve everything for me. The seductive part is pushed forward, and it's very much more in the, are we gonna are we gonna have sex or not? It's like it's much more direct and concrete and real. But to really be connected in love and sexuality in this character structure in a deep way, it involves both. And I think it's a great question because it's challenging, because usually there will be splits in people. Some will be, they love with their heart, but they're not sexually available, or it's too intense, too provoking to meet somebody that you really feel heart connection with to then have sex. It's like there's no sex, right? Because it's this heart space. Or, I can have sex with somebody that I don't love, and I can love somebody that I don't have sex with, but how do I combine the two where they're connected in this structure? So we work on that, and it's not just about sex and sexuality and sexual abuse. It's about, alliances, close relationships, constructive alliances versus destructive alliances, where, it's this development of loyalty. Who can I trust? Who can I be close to? As far as sexual abuse goes, Marlon, it's one of those things where when I test muscles, I ask right away, is there any sexual abuse? Because if there's sexual abuse, I tend to not test the muscles that are the sexual containment muscles. These are the adductor muscles in the inner part of the thigh. So when someone has when they're boundary muscles. Okay, so what do I mean by boundary muscles? We don't have a boundary to keep things out. That's a misconception. People think of a boundary as I have a boundary. It's that I have a no. A no, the no is more of an interpersonal thing. The boundary is what allows you to feel safe to have contact. So the sexual boundary muscles are really muscles that will turn you on if they're provoked because it allows for that kind of contact. These are the muscles that close the legs. They pull the legs together. If there's sexual abuse, I don't test them because that's a different bucket. Now we got to work on trauma. We do trauma. We do have a shock trauma and a developmental trauma training, but that's not something that we would get into in a foundation. It's really working on connecting what we call, and I put it in the little outline. There's the ego, then there's the me and the bigger me. The me is the reflex system or the survival. That's the fight, flight, freeze. And the bigger me is when we really go out and it's the sort of the near death. I'm going back home. I'm going back to God, however you conceive of God. We don't work on that stuff in the foundation. We work on the developmental coding system. But then if you want to proceed, you can do that. And you can actually do that. I believe you can do a shock training separate from the foundation training, but it's better if you have some foundation in your basic defenses before you start to work your trauma. But when you work on sexual trauma or violence or abuse or things like that, you're really the process there is sort of rebuilding a bridge between the ego function and what information was developed in the me. So, for example, a survivor of sexual trauma usually will have some deep feelings of shame around it that then if you get into the me, what's called the me energy, which is more of the fascia system, not the muscular system. It's not voluntary, it's survival, it's autonomic nervous system. The ego can be reinformed that, hey, you made a choice to survive. You got through the trauma. You were in this situation. There were not good choices. That was a choice you made. And the ego can then that's been fragmented in a PTSD type situation, can start to come back together in a new way. But it's a process of accessing information that is not available in your voluntary nervous system because that's what PTSD is, where we have a hard fight, flight, freeze, or please that says, don't go there ever again. Don't ever, 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 ever. That's trauma. Never, ever, ever again will I do that. So this is more about taking your coding system and rebuilding the bridge consciously with the me. And that's not something that we would do in the foundation training.
Thank you.
There was someone else who had a question, but they disappeared.
Just to add to that, what James was saying, when we go through the character structures, you will definitely go through the love and sexuality, which will explain to you where you are in aspect of that. So like with all our character structures, when we go through the training, we kind of understand how we were met during our childhood, and so how we were met kind of makes the codings that we have. So in that realization through the whole training, you will also understand where you are with your love sexuality. And what he was explaining was the romantic and the seductive. Those are the different ways in which you start expressing that, but that's based on how you were met during your childhood. So just to add that will also happen in the training, in the foundation.
Also, I want to say about this, Marlon, that because I didn't mention it earlier, even if there's an extremely closed part of your system and show up in your body map, there is always in the background some sense, right? That maybe it's a longing, maybe it's some vague sense that there's something missing, right? That there's something that wasn't explored, as Chantal says, there's something that wasn't met. So you find this happen all the time where people we're very much attracted to people generally who have the thing that we don't have. You will find romantic people in love and sexuality and seductive people getting married all the time. And then the connection is sex. And, you know, the romantic will have sex to have the relationship. And then once they have the relationship, it's done. And the seductive will make the commitment to have the sex and the relationship. And then they're like, wait a minute, this is, and so you will find people that will couple, or people will be attracted, that are, we are recognizing the thing that we are missing in the other. And then you can grow and develop into more of a balanced situation where there's more of an equal trade-off in relationship.
Okay, James, there was a question in the chat where Genevieve was asking if you can give an example of how to work with someone who has the levator scapula issues, and how would you address that more in a practical sense?
Can I put that off until I want to do some exercises. I'm tired of talking. Can we
Okay.
do can we hold that until we do some exercises?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that okay? Any other questions? All right, so did everyone get this? This is a little questionnaire that I prepared for today. You got a lot of handouts. I've learned that online you gotta do material. Does everyone have this
I do not have it.
in the chat?
Oh, it's in the chat.
I'll put it back in the chat.
Yeah, I joined late.
Sorry, who's missing? Oh, Corey. Yeah, okay.
Corey came in late.
I'll put it in the chat again.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you. I see it now. I got it now.
Got it? Okay, so I want you to answer this. You don't have to say it out loud, but if you've got a pen or a pencil. I feel a sense that I belong no matter where I am and who I'm with. And it's strongly agree or strongly disagree. I put others' needs before my own. I have no difficulty sensing and acting on my impulses. When I feel overwhelmed, I often respond by going blank. And by the way, this is just in general. You can also retake this and ask yourself, when I'm under stress, right? Because when there's a stressor, the answers might change. When I get nervous, I change the subject. I am goal-oriented and often make a to-do list to accomplish my short-term goals. I often feel that whatever I do is doomed to be wrong, and no matter what I try, I'm not enough. I am often affected by other people's behavior. I am made to feel. So this goes to the Marlon's question. I believe in the existence of true love. I expect unconditional loyalty from my friends. I hold strong opinions and enjoy sharing them even if others disagree with me. I'm reluctant to speak up in groups if what I have to say goes against the tide. I love being recognized for being excellent at something. I am embarrassed or defer to others' contributions when I am praised for doing good work. Take a moment. Let me know when you're done. So now we get to let's see how this goes. This is if I can give you a little flavor of foundation in a short amount of time, well, I'll feel very good about today's meeting. So these questions are designed to think a little bit about character structures. And Ariana pointed out to me yesterday, one of the things that I haven't mentioned yet, that by working with the body ego that I talked about, that we do, is we can work non-verbally, right? So a lot of the wounds, so to speak, come early in life. The first four character structures feature prominently. Because when you get later, there's more consciousness involved, there's memories involved, and people can talk about what they remember, but the body remembers no matter what. And you may not be able to remember what happened when you were a year old, but your body does. And so we can work non-verbally. And so I want to take you through the first four character structures. And based upon your answers, and see if we have any kind of volunteers here. But let me just take a little moment so that we're clear about what we're talking about. I'm referring back to this diagram. So as I said, there's an early position and a late position. These are defenses or protections based upon how the theme was met in the environment. So existence, what is existence? Existence is not existential, right? It's not a Jean-Paul Sartre here. This is not existential dread and this idea of no meaning in life. This is imprint you get, the imprint you get when you come into the world, right? So, and it's important to make that distinction because every time there is a trauma, a real trauma that threatens someone's life, it threatens your existence on some level. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you came into the world with a particularly with that imprint that shows up in, let's say, a body map or shows up in a training. Things can shift, they can move. You could have come into the world with the big party. Marlon, we've all been waiting for you. The whole village, like the traditional cultures, is the whole village comes to welcome the new life. That could be your story, but a trauma later in life, your way of responding to the trauma that will shift you so that you have a defense that will show up, it'll feel like, oh, I don't belong, I was never wanted. And that's not the case. It's just it came later and it just shows up that way. It's just, I don't want to go too much into it, but it's important to keep that in mind because what happens in the foundation training is people get really excited when they discover themselves in this new way. And then suddenly they're coming out in the world going, I'm a mental, I'm a late need, I'm a this, and I'm a that, and that. Maybe not. These are positions. These are not defining aspects. They track to some discovery about oh, this is why I do what I do. This is why I respond the way I do. This is why it's always been like this for me. This is how I live my life. Okay. So when we're talking about existence, we're talking about, and I use the image of, how we come into the world and what is our primary relationship with our existence, the existence of the world and the existence of ourselves. All right. So I'm going to use you again, Marlon. So the whole village comes and everything. Marlon may go through life feeling, I can't not belong here. I belong on earth. It's never a question of his own worth, no matter what happens, no matter if the whole village turns on him later, right? He'll still say, no, that's not real. What's really real for me is I was always wanted here. Okay. But often what happens is, and I use this analogy of the spacecraft re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. It's a bumpy road, when you go from outer space into the friction of the air, and the terror that comes up in the birthing process, and the fear about going from this cocoon-like protected little womb that keeps us warm and safe to a big, scary world is often experienced one of two ways. In the mental case, in the person that's got the mental imprint, there's a fear of being annihilated or breaking apart, like the spaceship, where I can experience in me an ambivalence about being physically, emotionally grounded in reality, my existence in the world, in connection with other people. It's sort of like the idea that there's 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Often mental people you will see their energy. This goes to what Laura was asking earlier. How do you assess? You will see their bodies. I went to a baseball game once with a friend of mine who works in tech, and he had a lot of software engineers. And you saw all the energy in their heads. Their bodies were just there. They were like human bobbleheads. All the energy was up here. Their bodies were just hanging, right? You ever meet people like that? And their eyes are, and everything is here. It's almost like they've got this look, right? That's like sort of the stereotypical mental position. People who have that imprint often feel very safe in their thoughts. They do science, they do intellectual pursuits where they stay in their mind. That's how they connect it. But the emotions will scare them. They will deny their anger and be moved by their fear. If the world gets scary, they've got that 1 foot out the door. It almost looks like they're dissociated in a shock state, but it's not. It's different. It's an imprint having to do with the initial sort of the early life imprint around existence. Emotionals, by contrast, I'm an emotional, are the spaceship gets through, you get through the chattering of the thing, the tiles didn't break up, it doesn't break apart, you get through, you're terrified and everything, and it lands in the middle of the ocean. And the hatch opens and the emotional gets up looking for the village, Marlin's village, and no one is there, and it's vast, there's no one there. And it's this, where is everybody? And it's almost like a Twilight Zone episode. The emotionals will deny their fear and feel their anger. You will see their eyes. If you've ever had relationships like this where someone doesn't want to go, they want to hold on to you emotionally and energetically. They say things like, that was the best training ever in the history of trainings. That's sort of typical emotional imprinted statement. These are just the early and late positions that tend to correspond to muscle tension in the body, right? So we're going to do an exercise in a little bit. I want to find out what your answers were.
Keep it straight.
What's that? Did somebody say something? No? So if the thoughts are disconnected from the body, it will show up usually in a muscle called longus capitis. We're going to do an exercise around that to reconnect the thoughts, the mental energy with emotional and physical energy. When you get through existence, and the balance thing is this feeling of, I belong here. More often than not, nowadays, I've worked in a university context. You can't believe how many university professors with tenure come in to therapy and say, what's wrong? I thought that once I got tenure, I would finally belong. Meaning, I'm trying all this time to solve my existence issue by getting this external validation of my worth. And there's a big disappointment around it because it doesn't really come from that. It comes from working through what we feel internally. Factually, we all belong, right? The bodynamic answer to this is you're here. So as a matter of fact, you belong. You wouldn't be here. The earth wants you. You got through it. You're here. What you perceive about your sense of belonging is part of your coding. Yeah, I am. Is it bothering you? Sorry. I take my going out. So that's existence. And you will find that people that are mental and people that are emotional, they're attracted to one another, but it's almost like the image is they're on two mountaintops far, far away. The more that the mental will withdraw from contact, the more that the emotional will try to grab the contact, which will scare the mental person from contact. They will withdraw more and they will grab more and it will loop. They will react to one another this way. The mental will feel blown out. The emotional will feel abandoned. When it comes to need structure, this is where the child starts to learn how to negotiate contact with needs, meaning can I get milk? Can I get held? Can I trust? This is where we learn how to trust. And we learn boundaries. We go from a merged contact situation to we start to experience what boundaries are. We learn that, for example, that our caregiver can leave and come back. We start to realize that, right? Because early in life, when you don't have that experience, they leave, they're dead. Yes, great point, Genevieve. It's not attachment exactly, but it sounds like attachment. But if you can hold that thought until the end, I'll comment on what Genevieve just said. Attachment does play a role. There's no question about it. But trust, how can I trust? How can I reach out from my core for contact and trust that it's going to be there? And if it's not there, it's okay. I'm still safe. It's just a moment in time. Caregiver wasn't available, but they will be available at some point. It's not like mom dies when she goes into the kitchen, because the really some of the cases are like that. People will go from fear to terror to panic, just like that, if you cancel a session because you got sick. You can't get sick. It's like you died to them. So in the need structure, we learn to come forward with our needs and they get met. And if they're met, then we feel, satisfied. That the small children, once they get fed and they get changed and they're tired, they got a nirvana look on their face. Oh, wouldn't it be great if I could sleep like my son used to sleep when he was little? I have issues in this area. When you have an early need person, they will often have very big eyes and often have this thing like they're looking around, almost like they're lost in the world, looking for some clue about what their needs are, what they need to pursue from the outside in, not from the inside out, because they weren't met in a certain way where they could actually reach out. When you have someone in a late position, This will happen. I've seen this. This will happen when sometimes if a child is fed and they're done and they want to get into that nirvana thing, but a parent will keep feeding them. It sort of wrecks that chance of satisfaction for them. And they have the experience of, yes, I have my needs, but nobody can meet them. So this is the person that will come to therapy and criticize everything you do and show up every week to criticize everything you do because they become very distrustful and almost pissy and critical. This is the person that will go out to dinner with you and you go around the table, what everybody's ordering, and they will go, I don't want that. 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 They'll be critical of any person's choice. Why would you want to order that, Corey? Why would anybody like that? That's the late need position. Autonomy is the exploration of impulse and emotion and curiosity and the world. And this is where, can I be emotionally full and still is that, I used the example earlier, is the contact there? Or if it's early autonomy, I don't even bother to feel my impulses. I go blank. When I'm emotional, I'm watching a movie by myself and feeling touched, but I'm not going to actually come forward with my impulses. I'm going to cut off from them. This is also, by the way we can all become a little bit psychopathic. We can go cold, we can go blank, we can detach from something that scares us. The late autonomy is a person that just when you feel that you're about ready to really to say the I love you and be together, they go, oh, by the way, did you catch that game the other day? It will feel like you're being, a little bit of a whiplash if that, or the client will take you almost like on a balloon ride and you'll just follow them as they go from one topic to another topic to another topic. They have their impulses, but they break the connection, meaning it's too scary to be fully myself emotionally and trust that someone's going to be there to meet it. Yeah, Ariana?
I want to give the example of my nephew, if you ever have a space for that.
Yeah, go for it. Do it right now.
So he's almost 5 years old, and we were at a store shopping for groceries. So he's handing out where you put the groceries into the bag, and I didn't have time to do that. So I went to pay, and by the time I put my eyes on the pad, put a pin, I lift my eyes, and he disappeared. And I started panicking. I was like, where is this child gone? So looking at everyone around, trying to orient, look under, over, look in the bathroom. He wasn't there. It took about maybe 90 seconds that someone else brought him back from the outside, pointing to me. So basically, what happened, he exited the building. And when I was questioning him later, what happened, he literally said, my feet were walking by themselves. And that's his exact, he doesn't make up stories. He's a very honest little boy. And that is his relationship with his own impulses. His impulse just said, like, let's go. And he just went, and he didn't have time to process where I was, what's happening around. So, but it kind of sounds funny. It's like my feet were walking by themselves. And that's kind of interesting just to know this material and how people are impulsive and acting on their impulses, and how it also takes them out of the contact as well. So we had a conversation, and it was interesting.
So that's a perfect autonomy statement. The impulses, this is when you can get lost in your impulses because they take over. The impulses have you in this stage, and you need support. You don't have impulses. Later, if you can contain your autonomy, you feel free emotionally. You can have your impulses, you can contain them, but you can stay in connection. Great example. So the last one that we're going to talk about is will, which is this is a big topic for everyone. This has to do with responsibility, choice, consequences. It's really about power. It's really about when the child suddenly is not crawling, but they're walking, and it turns out that I can do this. I can move the furniture. Look what I did. I have power. I can lift things up. I can do things, but also I can break something and be said, hey, you can't break the vase, Oh, and this is when the feelings of guilt, punishment, shame come in. You will find in the playground a lot about human civilization by watching 4-year-olds play with their toys. And a will child will want to take everybody else's toys and think there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But when someone else does that to the will child, takes their toys, they will come crying and go, "It's not fair. Lorena took my toys," and it's like, okay. And then what you learn is power and limits and actions and consequences, and what we have to do to negotiate relationships where we're making choices about sharing. We learn to share toys because it's better to have a connection than to have all the toys. Some people never learn this lesson. And when you get into the will situation, you have there's a difference between this illusion of fairness, right? Which the world is not a fair place. I just lost a dear friend who had muscular dystrophy for 50 years, oldest, and he was sick from the time I knew him 9 years old. I knew him when he walked, and he was in a wheelchair. There isn't a day that goes by that I haven't thought about him, and I think about him since. There's no way the world is fair for this friend of mine to have this illness. However, there is a sense in which that we experience in will structure, which I think of as a moral injury, where we become aware that we have certain expectations about how things are supposed to be. And when we get hurt in this way, it's not just that we're hurt, what we want gets thwarted. It's that we feel betrayed, right? There's a feeling of betrayal, which is sort of the seat of ethics. That part in will structure is really sort of the root of decency and of learning how to have your power and also respect other people's power. So the early position will be, if it's not safe for me to experience my power, then I will make myself wrong. There must be something wrong with me always. So this is the way I make myself a victim. If only I were different, I would be able to whatever. And so a person in this situation will typically set goals that are not achievable to recreate a feeling of hopelessness, martyrdom. All there is in life is suffering, and then you die. The late person also has a sense of power, but it doesn't get met ideally. And so they tend to blame everyone else. If only all of you could get your act together, we would be able to do something here. It's another way of making yourself powerless. You protect your power by making yourself powerless, either in the early stage or in the late stage. And both of these instances involve a feeling of being burdened. You don't go. Often what people think of when they think of power is they're not experiencing power in their body. Power is that I'm going to go do this, and there's an absence of resistance. What they have to push through in will, and it's a great resource. Will get you to go to work even when you don't want to, go to school when you don't want to, go to the theater when you don't want to, do a lot of things that you don't want to do through will, through not wanting to accept the consequences of not going. Take care of your children when you don't want to. But what will happen is power turns in on itself, and I'm so powerful that I can hold back my power, and that has this feeling of being weighed down or burdened. So what I wanted to do was see if anybody has anything that stood out to them in the questionnaire, and then walk you through exercises with specific muscles in all of these character structures, so you can sense kind of what we do to move the energy. Before I do, though, I want to address Genevieve's comment. There's an important distinction to make between attachment and existence. And that is that existence involves ego functions, meaning life skills that we learn related to that stage of life. So connectedness, the ego function of connectedness, this is more of a practitioner thing, involves bonding, heart opening, and feelings of support and self-support. These are the skills that we learn, okay? We learn to bond. We learn to open our heart. We learn to take in support. Attachment issues will get in the way of developing those skills around connection, because attachment is sort of before you even get around, before you even get into that space around existence, it's the feeling that needing to be validated all the time, needing to be provided assurance all the time, the needing to be told by the outside world that you belong here. It overlaps with existence, but it is different. Attachment issues need to sort of be resolved enough to get in and work with existence. They often get confused, and there's a risk, because if you're working with your existence and there's an attachment issues will intrude. They will hijack the process. They will take it over, and it'll be difficult for a person to sense using their body what the initial imprint is, or how they feel about their own right to exist as an emotional, physical, and spiritual being, because they're stuck in this, still trying to get somebody from the outside to give them the message that it's okay to be here. So whenever we're working on this, it's important that we make a distinction between attachment issues and connectedness around existence, because attachment is really, if the attachment issue is really, really strong, it's like Genevieve said, the avoidant and the anxious, but I'm thinking of the disorganized attachment. That person may need to get some therapy before they even can train, because the disorganized attachment, which shows up in what are so-called personality disorders, means it's sort of impossible, that you need to learn to take in enough support to regulate yourself enough so that you can be there and be open to the connection, so you can start to sense your existence. But it's a really on point observation. So with that, did anybody have anything around
We're just waiting if you can give the levator scapula example. Like, how would you work with
I'm going to do that, but
okay.
You want me to do that first, or do you want me to do that?
What is next on your
I was going to go through the questions and see if anybody wants to do a demo on this. We can jump to that. So the levator scapula, I'll jump ahead. The levator scapula is a will muscle. And this is that feeling that this is where I'm like this all the time, right? You see it lifts up the scapula and it connects to the neck, and it's like the bull-nosed thing. And if I turn this way, it will round the shoulders forward. You ever feel that? Like, and that has the feeling of, I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders before I even start my day. I feel burdened. Did anybody answer strongly agree to number 7? Does anyone ever experience that? Experience feeling burdened, blamed, or fear that that you are going to be blamed for everything, that everything's your responsibility? Leanne?
So my question is, like, I kind of get that, but then I've created a lot of, like, I'm noticing there's a lot of incongruencies between my lived experience and what I've accomplished and then what's in my body. Like, I've
Yeah.
disconnected a lot from it. So I'm the opposite. And yet I've got a lot of tension in there. And so when I engage that, I get nauseous in my stomach. So that's kind of, I think, like, that might be one of those incongruent ones for me. So yeah, anyways.
So that's great. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So did everyone understand what Leanne is saying? So if I understand you correctly, Leanne knows that she's been able to accomplish much in life. It's a she consciously she can accept it as reality. But internally in her body, there's a conflict between how she feels about the objective reality of knowing that she's powerful and she's able to do things. And when she tries to bridge the gap between what you're calling incongruence, the tension in the neck area, in the levator, to match it with the known reality, the response is nausea. Okay? Do I have that right, Leanne?
Yep, that's bang on.
Okay, so nausea to me is one of the emotions that we talk about. I didn't talk about, we have basically 7 emotions that we talk about in Bodynamic. Disgust is one of the core emotions. So disgust usually comes up when I've taken in something from the environment that's toxic and I couldn't keep it out and it's in there. And when it gets provoked, I feel sick. Okay. So without going into too much detail and doing a session here, do you want to do this exercise? You can all follow along and do this exercise and then talk about it, Leanne,
Yeah, do you want my camera on for that?
if you don't mind.
Okay. Me and technology. Sorry. Start video. All right.
Hi.
Hi. Let's set this up. Maybe like that. I don't know, is that okay?
Yep, perfect. So the exercise we do here is you can do it with 2 people or you can try it with yourself, where you take your hand and push down on your shoulder as hard as you can and push against the resistance from just the muscle. It's a muscle that is at the top of the scapula. Can you reach around and feel the scapula? That it's that bone that's at the top of your back. If you go to the edge of the scapula, you should push into a muscle there, right? Can you sense that?
More medial or lateral edge?
It will be medial edge.
Yeah. Okay.
Top medial edge. What the levator does is you feel that?
Yeah, I'm getting flashes.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
it's okay. We don't have to go too far on this, but those muscles will hold the scapula up and they attach to the neck. So if there's an issue here, they can often be hypertense, meaning my shoulders are up like this all the time. And I can get neck pain all the time. All right. So one way to release this is, and this is not, we're not talking about the shoulders. We're not talking about the trapezius muscle. It's not this movement. It's this movement here. It's the bull. Where it's almost like it takes your neck away. It shortens your neck. So if you push down with resistance, you can stand up or sit down if you want. And pull with that muscle against the resistance and breathe. And then release it and sense a shift.
There's a lot of energy that moves up in here and then gurgling in my throat even. So
Okay.
yeah.
What is your experience when you come forward with your power in life? How,
When you say that, I kind of want to curl
okay.
in my shoulder. So that's the somatic. My head has opinions on that, but
Okay.
yeah, my shoulders kind of shift in.
Okay. Is there any fear, any image, or any words that come up about what might happen if you drop your shoulders and come forward with your power?
It's this fear of failure.
Okay. What is failure to you?
Oh, I don't know. Getting it wrong, I guess.
Okay. And what happens if you fail? What will happen to you?
The world will end. It's pretty big. Yeah.
Okay. Did everyone see that? I cannot fail ever. So that immediately wakes up my heart, my empathy. Because in my imagination, it's tough to live in that space where you have to be perfect or else. It all falls on you, doesn't it, Leanne?
Yeah. I've had a lot of experiences of the messy and like the failure being part of the learning. So it's not like that I'm stuck there. Like I can move forward, right? It's not like I'm not.
I know you can. And I can tell that you're extremely capable, but it comes with a price.
Yeah, I'm tired of fighting with my body.
There you go.
I want it working with me instead of dragging it behind.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that's something where you can work on that. And someone will say one day, oh my God, Leanne, your shoulders are down. And you won't go, what? I didn't even notice. When did that happen?
Yeah.
The feeling of pressure, pressure is it's not dysfunctional. You're obviously functioning at a high level, but it takes an emotional toll. It's tiring. It's the myth of Sisyphus. Does everyone know that rock that you push up the hill? And then in the myth that only for it to roll back down and push up again and roll back down. So I see a shift in your face, in your eyes.
Yeah, this shoulder actually it feels much lower than this side. Like there's a significant difference
Right.
in the
So,
tension in it.
so what you've done is just activated it and put energy into it, which gives it an opportunity to have new, this is the corrective experience, new feedback.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be locked.
So is this one part of the energy management stuff? Because I've been doing some work, well, as best as I can without having taken your training yet, around that whole renegotiation. So is that
It's
one of those? No.
it's a neighbor of energy management. When you went to your neck and the gurgling, it
Mhm.
activated the high energy in your neck muscles, which means there's a real fear in you around dropping your shoulders and going forward and failing. Freedom to fail. That's how we grow.
Mhm.
Won't end the world. Can I ask, were you in your family? growing up? Did you feel a sense of responsibility? I don't know whether you have siblings or what your parents'
I'm
situation.
oldest girl, but I was second in line, so oldest girl, I had a lot of responsibility, for sure. And then my dad was highly critical of imperfection, so the
Okay.
combination of it. I found my fight as a 10-year-old and stood up, and I took on a lot of that role of protector. So yeah, there's a lot of, yeah.
So this is an example, everyone, of how Leanne, who's got a high level of function, a high level of awareness, nevertheless, by not engaging the body, the work you've done doesn't really go there because it's encoded.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say is if you go from the have to I can do this, I can take on responsibility, I know how to do this. That's a tremendous, there's a resource in this muscle, meaning you have the ability to deal with intense criticism and take on burdens and take on responsibilities. That's a great thing, by the way. That's a resource to be able to take on assignments or take on chores or burdens, but to be able to do it voluntarily because you have a trust in your ability to do it versus the print in the body which says, if I don't do this, the world's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how it was for you. That was the message you got. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. Can I
Is
ask
there-
a question about another existence type thing, and like how they, like you talked about neighboring, but then so I was just thinking about my son. He was really chill birth, which is not his energy. Just like floated in the water, crossed his leg, just really lovely. And then he was probably past the 24-hour mark before he actually could eat. Like his tongue was up by his top of his mouth. He couldn't latch properly. So he was like not eating. And then he has cystic fibrosis. He's got a lot going on in his body. And then he became this high needs kid. Like I literally remember wrapping him on my body to try and sleep because I could not put him down for 5 minutes. He would just go to alarm. And that's kind of how he's gone. But now he's very will, and like he's 11 now, and he's very controlling of his sister, and he's like born leader type person. But he's kind of, and then he's also in pull-ups. He doesn't wear, like he has never gone to the toilet. So he has really stuck in his development, and it seems like it has informed all the anxiety all the way up. Like even just high needs has to be around. He's homeschooled, so he's around us a lot, but he kind of goes into panic, right? If he's left alone or even going in the basement by himself, he can't do that. Those type of things. So like the existential crisis, even though he was literally strapped to me his whole freaking life, till he was probably like 3 or 4, it never landed for him because of that earlier thing. So I'm just curious how that they build on each other. And maybe that's a bigger question than for this. But
Well, it is a good question. I'm of the view that one stage can influence another stage. So other people view that we go through these stages, that they're really separate from one another, and then we put them all together. But I do see what happens is there's something that inhibits a person from one stage is because there's something disoriented in another stage that whenever there's a fear or insecurity, it will intrude. But that sounds to me more like what was asked earlier about attachment. There may be an attachment story there, which is a right brain thing, which is the ability to feel secure in your attachment so that you can then separate, so that he can then develop, sort of build resources in his different character structures.
right. Yeah, I don't know how to meet those needs. He doesn't stop talking. I can't be that present all the time.
Okay. So I was going to move on to need structure if you don't mind.
Anyway, yeah,
No,
no, go for it.
because this dovetails with that. So need structure, one of the things that's learned in need is that the caregiver has needs too, and it's okay. That it's balancing my needs against your needs. And it sounds like his needs overtake, and that you're available all the time or try to be and are exhausted. And
I don't even try. I don't even try to be. But
okay.
he's not aware consciously that I'm checked out. He just keeps going. So
Okay, but that would be that kind of like in demanding, insistent neediness where there isn't a sense of a boundary. The boundary is too scary to have. Where what he would need to learn is what's inside of him can be met, and you can be separate. You have needs of your own, meaning to take a break, to be tired, to go in the other room. So
working with exercise with kids will have the same impact of how they develop, or does it have to be in the lived experience solely?
okay, so here's what I have another exercise for today, and we're going over, I know, but we started late. But we'll do this other exercise. I was going to do 4, but we're going to do 2. So we did will, um, and now we'll do need. This is another one that is really very provoking for a lot of clients. It's the anterior deltoid. So the deltoid muscle is this cap that sits over the shoulder. There's 3 parts to it. There's the interior part, the frontward part, the medial part, and the posterior part. The front muscle is the need muscle. The middle one, the medial, is an autonomy muscle. Autonomy is the children that need space to fly. They sometimes flap their wings. I'm in my autonomy, but I need space to be me. The back one is a will muscle where I pick up the things, I pick up the furniture and I put it down, and I'm using that. Boom. But we're going to focus on just the one in the front. So what I want you all to do is breathe. And for any of you who have had issues around reaching out for contact, trust, reaching out for support, this would be a good muscle. Or in your son's case, Leanne, it would be training him to connect what you're saying is his neediness with the actual physical action of reaching out, right? Recalibrating it. So in this instance, I want you to imagine or see if you can sense into yourself something that you would need. Could be contact, could be food, could be support. And wait for an impulse. And very slowly, just activate that muscle in the front. And I'll look in the camera. And you want to reach out. Like this. A very subtle movement. Does anyone want to share? Lena.
It feels open, like you just took like a eucalyptus kind of smell and you're like, oh, everything opens all of a sudden, like a light. Yeah.
Yes, anyone else?
For me, I felt like warmth around my heart and like some heart openness. And I was like trying to imagine what I'm reaching out for, and it felt really good and very soothing actually. And invited a little bit of vulnerability too.
Yes.
So is it getting emotional, sad things supposed to happen right about now?
Supposed to?
Yeah, is that supposed to be the thing? Because I feel like crying. Okay, so that one worked.
Okay. So it could be that you're getting touched. I mean, I felt it too. It softens me. It's saying, hold me, pick me up, be with me, support me, breathe with me. So you could be getting touched, or there could be something in you that your body is remembering, that usually sadness has to do with some kind of loss. Did you experience something early in your life when you were little? Something that went away?
Like I didn't lose anyone, like in a death sense. Nothing comes to mind.
So this is where we're working pre-verbally, right? So we can't say there's not going to be necessarily a conscious memory, but your body is telling you that, sometimes there isn't some big psychodynamic insight. It's just growing up is hard. Things are going well. I'm happy, and we have to say goodbye when we grow up. It's not death. We're talking saying goodbye to something, letting go of something. Is it okay for you to feel sad? How do you feel about being sad? You said, am I supposed to feel this way?
I cry a lot. I've been kind of working on stuff over the years, so I always joke like, oh, okay, so this is a new feeling that I didn't think was sitting here. And yeah, like I said, if it's gonna make me cry, then it needs to happen. Like I don't feel like ashamed or embarrassed. You're like, yeah, this is part of it. And like you said, it's might not notice why, or you might not know why, but it's there that because you're getting that feeling from it. So it's like knowing that this is happening, going, okay, I'm happy with this. This crying makes me happy, knowing that I've released something that I may not be aware of it, but it happened, like you said. So it's a good feeling. That's how I relate to it.
So what I would interpret by what you're saying is that you learned how to maybe block some of your sadness and you're reclaiming it.
Definitely.
And so your body is remembering that it's okay to feel sad.
Yeah. It's been a few years now of working, like about 5 years or so of starting to like go back and release.
It doesn't have to be released necessarily, because I'm not sensing that it's an obstacle at this point, but it's that you can experience it and still be connected. I mean, think about it. I mean, one of the most basic things we do is we cry, and the arms go up right away. Ah, and they go up. And oh, what happened? What happened, Lena? And I pick you up. Well, now we're not going to do it now as adults. They'll take my license away. But energetically, we can do it. Because that's the impulse in me clinically. When I have an impulse to want to, the caregiver to, really feel my heart for you when you're sensing yourself in a deep way. That's the impulse. Do you want a hug? Maybe you don't want a hug, but I want to give you a hug because of what it wakes
Oh,
up in
I'm
me.
always here for hugs. Always.
But this is just, these are just two muscles, and this is just a very small taste of when we feel safe, what we can do to I would say, grow our experience of self, grow our access to our inner life. So I think we're over now. There was another muscle, if you want to do on your own for existence. If you feel that doing the questionnaire, you're maybe on where your mind is one place and your body's in another. I'm going to just demonstrate this real quickly. If you can do an exercise where you imagine pushing your chin straight back like this and making your neck long and breathing. That's longus capitis. That's an existence muscle that tends to connect thoughts with the body. And then for those who have issues around feeling joy and curiosity and exploration, there's a muscle called quadratus lumborum, which goes from the top of the pelvis to the rib cage. And this is what gets activated when children are crawling and they swivel the hips. Some people, we do an exercise where some people don't swivel the hips and they never really feel the joy and the excitement. And then they go crawl in the training, they go crawl to go get some object that's been placed there. And suddenly this is this feeling of joy. And so how you would do that is there's one of two ways. You can stand straight up and bend at the side to stretch the muscle this way. That's if you think it's too tight, and breathe into it. Or you can lift your hip up like this. Did everyone see that? And
Can you do that again, please? Thanks.
Okay. So what I do for me, so imagine this is the muscle that is activated when you lift up like this. You lift one foot up, but you lift up with this muscle right in the back. Lift up your hip. And you activate it that way. And when I do that, I usually get really excited. Oh, it's right away. I want to go, let's go do something. Let's go see something. If it's really tight in you, try to stretch it out by just bending at the waist.
Is it more of a lift kind of action?
Yes, you lift from here.
You told your pelvis.
I'll show you 1 second.
There we go. Oh, wow, he's good.
The muscle goes from here to here.
Okay.
So it's a band. You want to activate that muscle by lifting up one hip and then the other. Or you can get on the ground and crawl and swivel your hips. Put an object in the room and crawl towards it.
Okay.
And let yourself feel excited that, hey, I went and got the object. I can do this. So I want to say thank you to you all for coming. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and I hope that we see you all again at some future foundation, or I love this system, and it's really released me into loving my life and connecting with my life energy, and there's nothing greater than sharing that. So thank you all very much.
So I linked in the chat. Actually, I'm going to email everyone who participated today with all the links to the trainings in Florida and Edmonton in Canada and the new info sessions. And you can just come in, different teachers talk about different themes, and different stories. So if you want to learn from that perspective, you're always welcome to either meet us in person or online. And we're here for questions. Wherever you signed up, there is a link for you to reach out to either Chantal or myself. So you're welcome to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, we'll also let you know about the other trainings that we're going to have on an ongoing basis. Yeah.
So if you have anything, just email me and we'll go from there. Okay, I think we're done for today, James.
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
So much. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Yes. See you.